You wake up feeling like something is missing, not in an obvious way, not the kind of absence you can name, like a lost job, a failed relationship, or a distant friend. No, this is something deeper, a quiet void that lingers beneath your daily routine, whispering that something is off, that life should feel richer, fuller, more alive. And yet, you go about your day as if nothing is wrong. You smile at strangers, reply to messages, complete your tasks, but beneath it all, there's a dull ache, a sense of meaning slipping through your fingers. Why do so many of us, even with every external marker of success, money, relationships, social approval, still feel empty? Why does happiness, when it arrives, feel fleeting, like a shadow that disappears the moment you turn to grasp it? Carl Jung had an answer, but it's not an easy one to accept. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Jung believed that most of our suffering isn't caused by external circumstances, but by something far more elusive, the battle between the self we present to the world and the self we refuse to confront, the parts of us buried deep within, ignored, suppressed, denied. The truth is, most of us aren't living as our true selves. We're living as carefully crafted masks, masks that help us fit in, gain approval, and avoid pain. But the cost? A growing disconnect between who we are and who we pretend to be. And that disconnect, that's where your unhappiness begins. But what if I told you that the very emotions you avoid, the ones that make you uncomfortable, the ones you push away, are the key to something deeper? What if your suffering isn't a sign of something broken, but a whisper from the part of you that has been ignored for too long? This is where Jung takes us, into the uncharted depths of the unconscious, where your real self has been waiting all along. Imagine walking through a grand masquerade ball filled with elegantly dressed guests, each one wearing a carefully chosen mask. The music plays, laughter fills the air, and yet, beneath the polished appearances, no one truly sees each other. Every interaction is a performance, every conversation carefully crafted. Now, realize this. You are at that ball every single day. Jung called this mask the persona, the version of yourself you construct to navigate society. It is not inherently bad. In fact, it is necessary. Without a persona, we wouldn't be able to function in the world. We learn from childhood how to adapt, how to present ourselves in ways that gain acceptance. We shape our persona to fit expectations. At work, in relationships, even when we're alone scrolling through social media. But here lies the problem. The more we invest in our persona, the more we forget that it is just a mask. We mistake it for our true self, and the further we drift from our authentic nature, the more we feel empty, disconnected, unhappy. Think about the last time you forced a smile when you wanted to cry. The last time you said, "I'm fine," when you were anything but. The last time you agreed with something just to avoid conflict. With every small betrayal of our real emotions, our real thoughts, our real needs, we reinforce the illusion that we are what the world wants us to be, not who we actually are. Jung argued that much of modern suffering stems from this disconnection. The deeper the gap between our persona and our true self, the stronger the feeling of inauthenticity. A person might achieve status, wealth, even admiration, yet feel an unshakable hollowness inside. This is why so many seemingly successful individuals, celebrities, entrepreneurs, even spiritual leaders, privately battle depression. They have perfected the persona, but in the process, they have abandoned themselves. And here is the paradox. The more you try to chase happiness through external validation, the further you drift from what actually brings fulfillment. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But who are you, really? If the persona is only a mask, what lies beneath it? To answer this, we must go deeper into the parts of ourselves we've been trained to reject. The flashes of anger that rise when you're challenged, the envy that burns when someone else succeeds, the resentment you bury beneath forced politeness, the fears that creep in at night, whispering that you are not enough. You tell yourself these feelings do not define you. You suppress them, hide them, disown them. But they do not disappear. They gather in the darkness of your unconscious, forming what Carl Jung called the shadow, the hidden self, the reservoir of everything you reject in yourself. And no matter how deeply you try to bury it, the shadow does not stay silent. It leaks out in passive aggression, in self-sabotage, in irrational fears and unexplained guilt. It is the reason some people lash out over small inconveniences, why some crumble under self-doubt, why others project their flaws onto the world around them. The shadow does not die, it only manifests in ways you do not recognize. And this is why you're unhappy, not because of external circumstances, not because of fate, but because you are at war with yourself. How does the shadow form? As children, we are whole. We express joy, sadness, anger, curiosity, all without hesitation. But as we grow, we are taught that certain parts of us are unacceptable. Don't be so sensitive. Good girls don't get angry. Men don't cry. Be nice even if you don't want to. So we adapt. We push down what is not welcomed. We present only what is rewarded. We learn that love and acceptance come not from being authentic, but from being good. And everything that does not fit into this definition of good, that becomes the shadow. The irony is that what we suppress ends up controlling us more than what we accept. The more you deny your anger, the more it simmers beneath the surface, waiting for a moment to explode. The more you reject your fear, the more it paralyzes you in unexpected ways. The more you pretend you are fine, the more the emptiness grows. Jung believed that most human suffering comes not from the presence of darkness, but from our refusal to face it. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. If you do not confront your shadow, it will manifest in ways beyond your control. It will show up in the relationships you destroy, in the opportunities you avoid, in the cycles of pain you repeat. But what if there was another way? What if the very parts of yourself that you fear are the key to your wholeness? What if, instead of rejecting these parts of yourself, you turn to face them? This is the path of shadow integration, the process of reclaiming what has been lost, of making the unconscious conscious. Jung believed that true fulfillment does not come from eliminating the shadow, but from accepting it, from recognizing that what you fear within yourself is not your enemy, but an essential part of who you are. Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration. But how do you integrate something you've spent your whole life avoiding? Step 1. Radical self-honesty. The first step to integration is awareness. This requires brutal honesty, the willingness to see yourself as you are, not as you wish to be. Ask yourself, what triggers me the most in others? This often reveals what you suppress in yourself. What emotions do I avoid at all costs? When have I acted in ways I later regretted? Instead of rejecting these parts of yourself, observe them with curiosity. Do not judge, do not excuse, just notice. Step 2. Accepting your dark side. Imagine for a moment that your shadow is not an enemy, but a wounded part of you. A child locked away in the basement, banging on the door, begging to be acknowledged. How long will you keep pretending you don't hear it? True integration happens when you stop treating these parts of yourself as problems to be solved and start seeing them as aspects of your full humanity. Your anger, your sadness, your fears, they are not flaws. They are signals, messages from your unconscious, asking to be understood. There is no coming to consciousness without pain, but the pain of facing yourself is the price of true freedom. Step 3. Expressing what was suppressed. Many people live their whole lives repressing what they truly feel, but emotions do not disappear. They find other ways to manifest, sometimes through anxiety, sometimes through destructive habits, sometimes through physical illness. To integrate the shadow, you must give it expression. If you have spent your life suppressing anger, allow yourself to feel it, write about it, talk about it, channel it into movement. If you have hidden parts of yourself to gain approval, practice being more honest, even when it feels uncomfortable. If you have denied your own needs to keep the peace, start asserting yourself. Integration is not about becoming someone else. It is about reclaiming the full spectrum of who you already are. Step 4. Living as a whole person. The goal of shadow work is not to fix yourself because you were never broken to begin with. The goal is to stop dividing yourself into acceptable and unacceptable parts, and instead to live as a whole, authentic being. This is where real fulfillment begins, not in perfection, not in endless positivity, but in the deep self-acceptance that allows you to move through life without fear of your own reflection. And when you do this, when you embrace the fullness of who you are, something remarkable happens. The emptiness fades, the dissatisfaction dissolves, and in their place, a quiet peace arises. Not because life becomes easier, not because you have eliminated suffering, but because for the first time, you are no longer at war with yourself. Happiness was never something to be chased. It was never something outside of you. It was always hidden in the parts of yourself you were too afraid to face. Jung's greatest lesson is this: the more you run from yourself, the more suffering you create. But the moment you stop running, the moment you turn inward, face your shadow, and reclaim your true self, that is when the search for happiness ends. Because in that moment, you realize something profound. You were whole all along. If this video made you think, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What part resonated with you the most? And if you enjoy deep dives into psychology and philosophy, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. There's so much more to explore together. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.